In this chapter, we'll continue working on our walkie-talkie, and specifically, we're going to add in our antenna and also our volume control details. If you've been working with me, you can just go ahead and continue using the model you're working on. And if you're just starting this chapter from new, you can go into your sample folder, into chapter 5, and you can open the file named 05 walkie-talkie start. So the first thing we'll build will be our antenna. And we're going to look at a couple different ways that we build that. But before we go ahead and get started, just a little housekeeping. So at the moment we have our main walkie-talkie body, and we just want to move that off to its own layer, because if I select it and we go to properties, you'll notice that it's still on the default layer. So let me just go down here, I'll switch off isocurve surfaces, and that way it's nice and clean in our shaded view. I'll go to our layer tab, I'll select the object, and I'm going to move it to what's now called layer 3, but we'll change the name. So then I'll do a change object layer, and notice it changes the color of that layer. I'll just click once on the layer name, and I'm just going to call that main body. And I can either hit enter or just click outside of that highlighted box, and that'll change the name. Now I don't really like working with these bright colors, so if I just click on this color swatch tab, now I can just drag my slider around until I find a color I like. And this is just a little bit grayed out. So now that it's on its own layer, I can just go ahead and switch off the main body layer. And to draw the antenna, we'll need to bring back the underlay layer. Just click on that. Now let's switch to our front view. And I'll switch to a shaded view on this, and I'm going to use the shortcut, which is Control-Alt-S. And that brings that back. So as you'll notice, we've got our areas here. We've zoomed in. We're going to create this, and we're going to create this in this particular lesson. We're going to look at building this antenna in a couple different ways. So we use the control point curve, and I'll start down here. I want to start the line inside the body. Probably do this with 4 control points just to give me a little more control. And I want to bring the last point just a little shy of the top of the antenna, and we'll look at why in just a moment. That's my 4th point. I can hit enter. Now if I wanted to hit F10 to get the control points on and then move the points around, I could do that. But at the moment, I'm fairly happy with how that looks. So I'm just going to take the curve. I'll go into my solid menu, and I'll choose pipe. Now I do want to make sure where it says cap, yours probably says none. I do want to click on cap. So we have the option of a flat cap or a round cap. In this case, we want to get that little dome in there, so we'll choose a round cap. Now for the start radius, we're going to kind of have to guess on that with this method, and that's again one of the reasons I don't like this method. If I turn on the main body and then move my cursor, and let me show you what's going on in the perspective viewport. As I move the cursor, what I'm doing is actually telling Rhino how large to make that initial diameter. So if I go to my front view, I obviously don't want the antenna sticking out the side of the body. So if I bring that out about there-ish, that should be about good. Now for the next radius, it's kind of doing the same thing. Again, let me move up to the perspective viewport. So I can kind of drag and get an idea here. If I wanted to do exactly the same diameter, I could just hit enter again because it's telling me that's my radius for the previous circle. Let's go down to the front viewport. So again, I can just kind of drag this out until it looks to be about the right length, and then that'll give me a radius that's going to fit in that area. So as soon as I click that, it's going to ask me if I want to add any other radiuses. So if I were going to, I'm not going to put one in here, but if I wanted to add one and have it be really large or really small so we get kind of a wavy cross section, we could do that. But for this particular shape, we really just need one size. So I can click enter, and as soon as I click enter, it applies that command, and there's our surface. Now obviously that's not inside the walkie-talkie, so if I go to this view, and if I press Control-Alt-S to turn this to a shaded view, I can take this shape, and using my gumball, I'll just kind of drag that into position. And we'll come back out here and take a look. So that looks fairly good. You'll notice, because we were following this pipe, we didn't have a lot of control of what was going on up here, so we've deviated from our design. And I would say at the top, we've really deviated from our design. And again, on the interior left edge of this antenna, we've kind of deviated from that design. In this particular case, I don't like the pipe with the end cap. let's just go ahead and delete that. And I'll switch off my main body. And I'll go ahead and I'm going to delete this curve. And we'll draw 2 new curves. So again, using control point curve, I'll come down here. And let's see if we can get this curve with just 3 points. So let's get 1 to start, 1 about in the middle, and 1 right about up here. So we're pretty close to the shape I like. I'll select the curve and I'll hit F10. And I'll move him out just a little bit. And I might even move it up just a little bit. That way I can get that a little further out without worrying too much about the edge. And this one I'll bring out just a hair more. So getting that curvature that's kind of nice there. So I'm going to actually use the exact same curve and just drag it over to the left. And that'll be our starting point for this inner curve that we're going to draw. Let's click and drag that over. And while I'm dragging, I'm just going to tap the Alt key. And notice I get the plus sign. And I'm going to move it until the very top is about where I want it. And I can always zoom in and just move that a little more if I want. So now I know I have a curve where the ends at the bottom and the end at the top lines up perfectly. So I'll hit F10 and now I can turn on my control points. Let's bring this bottom out just a bit. And the same with that control point there. And we can adjust that until it's just right. So that looks pretty good, I think. So I'll hit Escape twice to switch off the control points. That'll do it for this lesson. In the next lesson, we'll continue to build the antenna.